domestic violence and sexual abuse intersect, and how the dynamics of that play out as opposed to domestic abuse where sexual abuse isn't a part of that equation.
Shall I respond? I was going to say, in our 23 years of operation, probably the 1,000 women that we've supported, where there's physical and emotional violence, it spills into the sexual violence. So there is this issue about the headings that we give it, and often in terms of the sexual violence, that's the last thing that women will talk about, because it's the most difficult, because it is about your intimate relationship.
I'm not sure that there's I'm not a psychologist. I'm not sure that there's a sort of standard pattern. When I've spoken to victims, sexual violence is quite frequently a part of a pattern of violence. And kind of bullying sexual demands is part of it too. It's part of the kind of, she won't do what I want, and so that gives me a right to be violent, is kind of a story that I have heard on a number of occasions. But I can't say, I can't say where the intersection is, because I don't know. I have heard stories from people, but these are just anecdotes, and I haven't got the capacity to turn them into a proper piece of research.
I mean, just in terms of some of the issues for male victims, I mean, sexual violence is nowhere near in terms of prevalent in an abusive relationship as it would be for a female victim. But we do have men who say they are victims of sexual violence at the hands of their wife. Often they're forced into sexual relations with them when they don't want to be, on the basis of if we don't have sex, you'll be in lots of trouble. And we've had one particular man who was basically threatened that if he didn't have sex with his wife, she would kill him, because obviously physically there's certain issues that make it a bit more difficult. We also have some men who obviously not directly having sexual violence, but we've had some men who've said that their female partners have deliberately gone out and had affairs with other men, including bringing other men into their house. So even though they're not directly sexually abusing the man, they kind of use sex as a psychological issue to further abuse the man, but obviously not physically directly, if that makes sense.
One of the issues which the gendered version of everything brings about is that we've spoken, I think everybody has spoken this evening, about men's issues and women's issues. And of course there's a whole department of the education part of the government called social services, and they're interested in the results as far as children are concerned. And missing from everything that we've said this evening is that 66 children per year are killed by a parent or a future parent. Okay? And one of the difficulties that this agenda is actually bringing to the surface is that the children become completely ignored. And if I could go back to Margaret and just ask Margaret, you and your four sisters experienced horrendous domestic violence. Did your brother also experience the same? And what were the effects, do you think, on him?
Well, my brother became very ill, started having seizures. He died at the age of 17. One of my sisters committed suicide because, again, as I said, these things are so horrendous. And when a child, although we are all growing up under one roof, we're not together, really, because we're in fear. There was not a really close bonding because we're all trying to live our life to survive, So there was no one you can turn to. Just keep very quiet, shut up,
Do you imagine your brother would have come into adulthood with similar kinds of problems to you?
Well, yes. I mean, I can't say for that because I myself, as coming from that, I have not turned to violence. you know, because a lot of they said when a child grows up, they usually can turn towards becoming violent. But it doesn't always happen that way, because I did not myself, and from what I know, my sisters, I mean, perhaps emotionally certain things could affect them, but from what I can see, I did not turn to that way of becoming violent.
NSPCC figures say that 1 in 5 children in Britain experience domestic abuse.
Yes.
It's a serious issue for
Very
children.
serious.
We're going to entertain